Welcome to the Esports Arena World Series of Sealed. We have gathered 6 players from around the U.S., and we're really excited to see them engage in a new Hearthstone format, which people are going to be introduced to, and with an element of what you guys have experienced in poker. My name is Frodan. I'm joined by TJ Sanders, reuniting us, the blue shirt boys, although today TJ decided to wear purple, so he didn't get the memo. I was bringing the blue shirts for old nostalgia's sake, TJ.
Nobody told me. Nobody told
you. All right. Well, hopefully people told you about this event. It's going to be pretty sick. We have $6,000 on the line. Each player is given $1,000 to bet before the match, but ultimately we're going to be doing the draw with sealed format, TJ, which is pretty cool because last time we were casting this event, we saw some really fun stuff.
Yeah, sealed format's really interesting because it brings in a lot of elements of deck building, but on the fly. You know, you get those limited amount of cards, and you have to build 3 decks with the limited pool of cards that you open right there on the spot. So it's really interesting, really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing a new unique format that utilizes sealed.
Yeah, we'll tell you all about it after we show this quick introduction video on what this event is all about.
Hey guys, and welcome to Esports Arena's World Series of Sealed. I'm your host, Shimonahi.
And I'm your dealer, Wade.
Today's tournament is using TempoStorm's sealed format. If you want to learn more about this card generating program, go ahead and head over to tempostorm.com.
Our special twist is a poker theme. Unlike most tournaments that use a bracket format, our competitors start with 1,000 gold.
Throughout the day, players will be wagering their gold in best-of-3 matches with winner take all.
At the beginning of each set, players are going to place an ante, which increases throughout the day. And then at the beginning of each game of the set, they'll be able to use the standard poker actions: check, bet, call, raise, and fold.
The tournament ends when one player has all the gold. If you want to find out more, head over to worldseriesofsealed.com.
That's right. So a little glimpse into it. There's a lot of options before the matches even start. Of course, we talk about the deck construction, but the element that really draws people in my opinion, for this event is how will they manage their out-of-game economy? People are looking directly at the money of how much they want to win per match, that beforehand you can bet the Hearthstone gold. But there also is a long-term schedule that you have to be mindful of, TJ. You can't just spend it all because you feel really good against this one match. And then you have to account for how the other players have built their decks and how good they are relative to your decks as well. It's really exciting. A lot of out-of-match preparation and strategy.
Yeah, at the beginning of the day, you have to really have a good sense of deck evaluation and how your deck matches up against, a general field of sealed decks.
Sure.
And then as you mentioned, as the day goes on, you have to sort of realize, well, how is my deck going to do against this guy? How are my 3 decks going to do against this guy's 3 decks? So it's a really cool format, and looking to see who's going to come out on top.
That's right. Knowledge is power, and we'll see who can ultimately leverage that to get an advantage. Let's take a look at the schedule of how everything's going to pan out today. We have 6 players gathered from all corners of the country. We have StrifeCro to start things off, StrifeCro from Cloud9, up against VLPS from Team Splice Gaming. Then we have Raynad from TempoStorm up against Firebat, who also is a really recent member of Cloud9, newly minted. And then, of course, our last 2 players, Zalay from Team Archon, Trump with Team Solo Mid. Really cool mix of players. And I don't know if any person is directly the favorite here, TJ. We can definitely look at strong aspects of players. When I look at all 6 of these guys, I'm not going to be surprised to see any of them go to the finals.
Very true. All of them are really strong deck builders and really strong players in general. And, of course, you can see the schedule there. After those scheduled matches, the players that are remaining left in the tournament with still gold or money, chips, I guess, so to speak, will draft again and play until there are only 2 players remaining. And then once there are only 2 players remaining, it'll sort of be like a sudden death round where the player that's down in chips is forced to go all in, and those players will redraft again. So really cool day, lots of exciting matches, and lots of utilization of sealed, which is what I'm most excited for.
Yep, we'll be updating you guys on how the standings are. In fact, let's take a look at how the standings currently look, even though nothing has changed from the 5 minutes ago since we started this broadcast. We're going to be updating you guys before the match on what they are betting with each other, as well as what their gold stack looks like after each match. And ultimately, there is going to be a minimum set. You can't just say, you know what, I'm not feeling very good against Zalay, for example, a really strong deck builder. I don't really want to lose too much against them. You have to bet something. And ultimately, if you run out of chips, then you're just out of the tournament. So it's going to be one of those risk versus reward situations.
Yeah, so basically everybody's going to start with 1,000 gold. And gold is just sort of it's not the Hearthstone gold, it's just sort of an arbitrary amount of chips, I suppose. And they'll have that minimum bet you talked about. They'll also have a maximum bet, a maximum raise. So that way someone doesn't, all in on their first round and eliminate themselves from the tournament 30 minutes in. So there'll be minimum, and that'll be raised as the tournament progresses through. So that way there aren't minimum betting all day, and we're forced to be here for 6 days in a row watching, StrifeCro and VLPS or whoever it is battle it out minimum betting.
Yeah, there's a slow roll, and then ultimately there's the people who just say, you know what, it's lunchtime. I'm just going to go in all in here. We're going to have a halfway point in between then. I believe the first match is already kind of taking substance. VLPS and StrifeCro already have begun drafting. It is a half-an-hour process for the sealed tool that was developed by the Temple Storm guys. And we're not trying. We're making sure to try to budget accordingly, because watching these guys draft for half an hour does sometimes become a little bit tough when you have so many people trying to draft at the same time, DJ.
Yeah. So looks like we're going to jump into VLPS to see how his draft was going, what cards he opened, and we'll see exactly. So we're actually going to jump into his pack opening initially. So we go through here and see some of the power cards that he's drawing. AoE cards, I think, are one of the highest value in Sealed, just because there's not that many of them, and they're so game swinging.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really important things. In draft formats in general, you try to follow a set rules of priorities. In Magic the Gathering, for example, Raynan I was actually doing some drafts with him the other day, and he was teaching me about a concept called break, where you try to draft based off each letter. Each letter represents something else. So B in break would be a bomb. So whenever you see a bomb, that takes a higher priority than removal, which is the second thing. In this version of Seal for Hearthstone, we've definitely found that AoE is a very powerful high priority pick. Flame Strike being one of them. If Mage actually has a lot of access to it. Blizzard being another good one. Where even like Hellfire and Warlock being very strong to clear the board. And the reason why is because AoE spells actually give you a way to come back, versus in other games sometimes you have abilities to assign blockers and how those things. If you can take initiative with AoE, it's very, very powerful to get that ability to swing the board or even secure the board to prevent your opponent from ever being able to make a comeback.
Yeah. And we see VLPS here. He's opened a couple of good bombs, as you said. Double Sylvanas, I think he opened up. And the way Sealed works is if you open up multiples of like a legendary, for example, you can put, if you open up 2 Sylvanases, you can put 1 Sylvanas in 2 of your decks. So that ends up being a cool thing if you draft multiple legendaries. We saw Kel'Thuzad there, and also a couple Sludge Belchers, which is a fantastic card in Sealed format because it is a rare.
We haven't actually mixed too much with the messed too much with the formula. We still keep the set amount of packs relative to each adventure. Adventures also represent books because you can't actually get any packs of adventures. You just get the cards in the game. So the books are supposed to represent pulling random cards from those adventures and content. League of Explorers, of course, being the most represented adventure, is the newest one. That's the formula. I think it has 8 books, versus the others have like a set amount of packs. I believe it's 10 from an expansion.
Yeah. So you can see here we're opening it up through GVG, and not too much here. Also, another thing to note with Seal, what we've learned from the past, we've only really had a small sample size. I think the Team Brawl, Red Bull Team Brawl event was probably the biggest sample size we're going to get, and we saw some of the teams drafting towards making like a deck that looked like a constructed deck. And that didn't work, just because unless it's exactly the same as a constructed deck, it's not going to be nearly as powerful. And it seemed like Curve was one of the most consistent ways to win, is making sure that every single deck that you have is curving out. And so making sure that you align that with the powerful cards that you get is super important.
Yeah, some pretty interesting cards being opened. Another legendary, the Nexus Champion Sarad, a card that gets value. The decks do end up becoming a little bit slower whenever you're seeing these decks being constructed, because like you said, they don't have immediately the most powerful synergies. Looks like we have finished opening effectively all the packs here. Cards like Chill Mall appearing in TGT right before we got to the League of Explorers part. So we're going to have VLPS log in and see everything from that point on. Cool stuff overall. Like, it seems like a pretty decent draft. Just because he has 2 Sylvanas doesn't necessarily mean that, one, they'll be the game deciding, but sometimes you don't even draw these really big impactful cards. It's about more of holistic strategy. And remember, they're playing 3 decks. A lot of times in other draft formats in different games, you're playing 1 deck, but we're forcing all of them to play the 3 decks that they choose to build.
Yeah, and there's some like sleeper cards and sleeper classes that talking with people when Sealed first came out, they had sort of a different idea of the power level that class would have going into sealed formats. I think the biggest one was Hunter. A lot of players didn't expect Hunter to do that well, but as we've seen in the past with some of these sealed events, is Hunter can very easily choose a win condition, and that's they have a clock. Eventually, they can just choose aggressive lines and aggressive spells, and make a deck that will beat a lot of decks because it'll punish the slower ones. And having a win condition that's really easy to spot, I think, is a big deal for a sealed deck, because you're not always given a really easy win condition like that.
So it looks like we're going to just hop onto what VLPS has right now and taking some early looks at how his decks are shaping up to be. Some interesting choices here. He's going with a Hunter, Shaman, Warrior lineup here. Do you like that, TJ?
Yeah, I think this is really good. Warrior has a lot of their weapons are common. So it's really easy to piece together Fiery War Axes. It's really easy to piece together Death's Bite. Death's Bite being the biggest one, just because it's one of the most powerful cards in all formats. So they have a lot of those strong commons. Hunter, as I mentioned, it's easy to make an aggressively themed Hunter and have an easy win condition. And Shaman was really successful also. Because they just have a lot of powerful spells. They are rares, a lot of them, so they can be hard. But if you can manage to put together rares like Power Mace or their AoE spells, Lightning Storm, those are fantastic cards.
Yeah, there's some really ridiculously strong cards. The keys for Hunter, the 2 Savannah High Mains, if you can get to that point. You're going to be able to stabilize 2 Fire Elementals for Shaman. That's also a really high value card. And then you look at like Death's Bite in the Warrior. So these are really good staple cards that you normally see in a lot of Warrior. But the things surrounding them, is that going to be what allows them to build it? You can see that in the Warrior, he's building a Grim Patron style deck, but he doesn't have as much synergy. For example, it's most notably missing cards like Battle Rage, which is what really makes the engine go in Patron to go for these big wombo combo style things. So whether or not VLPS can get it to activate, I mean, he also has Bolster in a Patron deck, which doesn't exactly speak a lot of synergy originally. But then you look at cards like Lord of the Arena and how he's going to use Fierce Monkeys, and it's like, okay, maybe this can work. Maybe.
Bolster on a Death Lord and a board with a Death Lord and a Fierce Monkey is actually really powerful. But yeah, it's sort of, he does have some cycle. He's got Loot Hoarder. He does have Cold Light Oracle, which is sort of his, I guess, replacement. The poor man's replacement to Battle Rage in the Patron Warrior deck. So I'm really curious to see how that deck's going to play out, because he does have a lot of the pieces. You know, double Whirlwind, Inner Rage, double Death Bite, and the Patrons.
It's cute, the Bolster with Death Lord and Unstable Ghoul, and even, like I said, the Fierce Monkey. You never know if the Belcher Slime ends up becoming a 3/4 afterwards. So I like where his head's at, and he even has a King's Defender to gain +1 durability for having a taunt minion on board. So that's fun. I want to take a look more closely at decks like the Hunter, because the Hunter, even though it does have a very powerful hero power that can scale well into the late game to end the games. I've seen a lot of Hunter decks actually fail in Sealed when we were first testing things and seeing it in motion, because it's so reliant on making sure that the curve is very good, and that way you can maximize damage. If you ever have suboptimal turns with Hunter, your hero power doesn't help you get back on board at all. In fact, it's just more damage straight to the face, which sometimes is the way you close out games, but say they're at 15, 16 health, and then you just lose board and you can't really get it back.
Yeah.
How do you expect to fight back from that position?
Yeah. And also one thing to know, a big thing with Sealed is not to try and I think players that play a lot of Arena will understand this point. Not to try and do too many things at once. Not to try and make your deck have mech synergy, but also have, like big bombs and also try and make AoE. You definitely need to try and focus on, one type of thing, either more aggressive strategy or more control strategy. That's why that Patron deck from VLPS is interesting, but I'm not sure if it's going to work, because it tries to focus on taunt synergy with Bolster. It also has Patrons, and it's going to be a little wonky. When it lines up, it'll line up nicely. But when it doesn't, he'll be left with a lot of dead cards in his hand, like Whirlwind, Inner Rage, Bolster, and Execute. A hand with those 4 cards in him and no minions or anything to play on the board is going to be rough for him. So curious to see how those decks are going to play out.
All right, so let's take a look at StrifeCro's draft. The VLPS will be taking on StrifeCro, who I also consider a very strong player in this format. If I have to pick one of the players that would struggle the most, just purely off of experience, it would be a guy like VLPS, but he already showed that he has a really good ability to analyze his draft. So I feel like he's in a pretty decent spot already versus StrifeCro, who's had a lot of practice with the tools like this before. Yeah. And in the end, the more experience you are with it, I feel like you're in a better position. So I'm already feeling StrifeCro. I feel like he's definitely one of the players to watch out for this event.
Yeah, VLPS, when people think of him, VLPS, I think I was looking at his stats the other day, is the over the past 6 months, he has the second highest ladder finish out of any player in the Americas. So that's a really impressive thing for him, but that doesn't really help you coming into Sealed. Because you have to build the decks. What was that legendary? I missed it.
Archmage Antonitis.
Archmage Antonitis.
Yeah, just cool observations.
No,
that's part of what makes it really fun to just see anything in card games is like the pack opening, the luck of being able to open up a really sick card. But more importantly, the application of it. Captain Greenskin, another interesting legendary. Not really sure if StrifeCro will be playing a weapon class. Weapon classes in general can be very strong. Being able to start off with early value and making sure that your opponent can't ever establish true tempo on you, like True Silver Champion being one of the best, Fiery War Axe and Death Spite. Those are some of the most powerful cards. However, we've seen classes like Warrior not be drafted very often in the Sealed. Which is why it's interesting that Hunter and Warrior were chosen by VLPS. Those are two classes that we see a lot less compared to Mage, Paladin, even like Druid and Priest are much more represented than those other classes.
I think it's because the power cards are easier to spot with those classes.
There's more plentiful.
Yeah, exactly. You can have like 50 cards and you have to narrow it down, whereas if you're building a Hunter, you get to like 25 and you're having to put random stuff in. So
and I think another element of it, too, is how spread out the cards are. If you have all of your powerful cards in one set, you have a less likelihood of being able to to build a deck from that, because you're only going to get a set amount of cards of an expansion versus, Paladin actually spread out really well. GVG got some good cards, and then League of Explorers got Keeper of Oldemon. There's a lot of good things in Mage as well that were spread out over time. So you have to be really mindful of that as time goes on.
Yeah, just going through here, getting through some of these cards. Not really anything that stood out to me as far as like power level. When he was opening the Nax cards, StrifeCro got some really great ones like double Zombie Chow, double Sludge Belcher, which are both fantastic. Death Rattles, of course. Nax considered one of the strongest content, I guess. It wasn't an expansion, but one of the strongest content that was released for Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's true. I don't see I do see Archmage Antonitis being as the big bomb, but I do think that cards like Zombie Chow, like if you got Shielded Mini Bot for a Paladin, those are like the cards that really do a lot of heavy lifting to make sure you curve out well, which is it's really powerful in any kind of format in Hearthstone, Arena and Constructed and in Sealed. Being able to get onto the board early and making sure you don't relinquish that board control. I mean, that's just the key to win in a lot of card games. You don't have to even apply it to Hearthstone, but it's very much so emphasized in a game like Hearthstone. Yeah,
I'm curious to see if we're going to see too many Paladins. We saw StrifeCro open a muster for battle, and StrifeCro has classically been a guy that's pretty attached to Paladin as a class. Mostly in Constructed, but I'd imagine that just transfer over to Sealed because of the mastery that he maybe feels with that class. So it does have a lot of great commons. But again, that doesn't necessarily translate over to Sealed. You're not guaranteed to open those commons, because what if those commons are all weighted towards a deck type or an expansion type that you don't get very many of. So we saw True Silver Champions, we saw Muster for Battle. So probably Paladin I would lean towards for StrifeCro based off that opening, and Mage with Archmage Antonitis being super powerful.
All right, so looks like we do have StrifeCro's classes at least put in here. Oh, in fact, we have his decks.
Okay.
He is going also with Hunter and Shaman. However, his third class is in a Warrior. It's a Mage, and that doesn't surprise us because of Archmage Antonitis. That card alone can just win you the game, assuming you have spells to back it up. Let's see how it's actually shaping up to be. Do you see any immediate synergies in the Mage? This seems like a general value build.
Yeah, he's got the Zombie Chow in there. He's got a lot of tempo spells early on, which could be comboed later on for the Archmage Antonitis. Ethereal Conjurer also. He can pick and choose what he wants. Maybe if he has Archmage Antonitis in hand, he can pick a cheap spell to combo with that. But nothing that gives like spare parts not too much synergy with either Flamewaker or Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah, there's no mech synergy that usually ends up happening because you can get a lot of mechs from GVG. Goblin Blast Mage usually ends up rounding out that curve. However, he does have some powerful cards, Blizzard and Flame Strike being two of the heavy lifters as well as Antonidas. So there's a lot of late game potential in that mage, but it can get overrun if he's too slow. Looking at the Hunter, I actually like the fact that StrifeCro is so heavy on the one-drops. He's even putting cards like Tournament Attendee in because he just wants to be so fast.
Yeah.
You saw that VLPS has Savannah Jaime, so he's playing a more mid-range, just curving out in a slower Hunter deck. But, I mean, he's got some synergies. Look at the Desert Camel Tournament Attendee or Cavaldi Raider synergy. That's really cool if he can pull that off.
That's great, yeah. Just a lot of one-drops. But you can assume that your opponent's going to have some one-drops as well. If you pull out, it's not like Constructed where people are just going to skip the Zombie Chow. Most all of these decks are going to have probably at least one drop. So, but getting that injured Cavaldi out is going to be really important too. But super aggressive style.
I really like how StrifeCro also has outfitted his Shaman cards. There's a lot of things that naturally stand out with synergy that you don't immediately piece together. So a card like Rizervan Hunter, that's actually not too bad if you're able to have Mooglish Champion or Kael'Thuzad go off on it. Those are like abilities to see synergy where normally you wouldn't find like, Razorfin Hunter, maybe I can like Bloodlust it, but if I can't do anything else. Or Flame Tongue Totem. She's finding workarounds like Murloc Tide Hunter also fits that strategy. Direwolf Alpha isn't Flame Tongue Totem, but it kind of substitutes it with a hero power that also summons these 0/2 totems.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Whether or not it's good enough to climb on board is completely dependent on cards like Zombie Chow and Totem Golems to start things off, which I'm never too confident in. And I feel like if there's anything that's a little bit weak with the Shaman deck is it might not have an early game play, and he needs to be drawing Lightning Storm to come back onto the board because he does have a lot of mid-range curve. His 4 to 8 slots is so emphasized in this deck compared to his 1 to 3.
Yeah, 3 and below he only has, 6, 7 cards, which is pretty low. And Direwolf Alpha.
That he wants to like play on a board, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he actually decided to. It looks like he just opened 2 of the Zombie Chows. So he decided to split them up into his decks to make the draws for each of them more consistent. Yeah. Probably after realizing that his Shaman deck was going to struggle early, moved one over there. But
yeah, I think he's just saying I need something to play with Mage. The fact that he put almost all of his 1-drops into Hunter. It already speaks like, I don't have that much room to work with 1-drops. And 1-drops can be pretty important to how they answer 2-drops, which I think are the ultimate heavy lifters in decks. The fact that you can get it ahead on the board on turn 2 allows you to pick up really good trades leading up to the following turns.
It's interesting. The Clockwork Gnomes seem like they'd have so much synergy in the Mage deck. Then he could take out the Zombie Chow and put that in the Shaman deck, which could make up for the lack of that. But obviously feels like the Hunter deck needs to have most of the 1-drops. Feels like he has enough tempo tools, perhaps, with double Frostbolt and Flame Cannon to take back control of the board with Mage and enough spells to combo with Archmage Antonidas or Flamewaker. So,
yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. StrifeCro has 2 very slow decks. Actually, you know what? Mage isn't that slow. He's got a lot of 2-drops, which is pretty strong. So I guess he has one slow deck. It's the Shaman deck that really wants to be able to set up long, big board control and then like have Kael'Thuzad as like this finisher. And then you have Mage, which is just going to be able to climb onto the board, hopefully use AoE to fight back if it needs to, but ultimately just keep outvaluing you. Yeah. With like Flame Cannon, it can just really fight for the tempo. And then Hunters just rush you down with some weird ability like, Ram Wrangler in case it's just like, I'm falling a little bit behind the board. Maybe I just get a Charger or like King Crush.
Yeah, well, it's funny. He has some weird mech synergy in there. It's very small, but Clockwork Gnome, Cogmaster, Mech Warper,
Metal Tooth Leaper.
And 1 Metal Tooth Leaper.
Which is not bad if it can get like at least, if you get 1 minion on board, it's a 5/3 for 3, which if it's an aggressive deck, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's sort of like a comboed SI7 agent if you have 2 creatures on board, because you usually get the extra 2 damage immediately.
Well, do you remember the old Dark Iron Dwarf? That's what Metal Tooth Leaper feels like. But if you can get it landed on 2 of them, then it's like, wow, this actually is a little bit strong. But the problem, of course, is consistency with drawing mechs. And then, of course, the other side of it is when you play Metal Tooth Leaper in constructed decks for Hunter, a lot of times you're giving up the other synergies that really benefit off of like kill commands with beasts or how you use Houndmaster. So in this situation, StrifeCro is more he's just trying to like go in a few different directions so that way his deck doesn't feel completely linear on just building mechs or just having Desert Camel being the only way he can synergize with it. I like it.
He could end up just running away with games with this Hunter deck just because of the aggressive starts. I'm not sure how many people are going to expect this and draft a lot of one drops to try and stop the pressure before it gets out of hand. So that's probably the deck that StrifeCro has that I'll be keeping the biggest eye on. But I'll have to be quick because those games are probably going to be quick.
All right, cool. So we have all 3 classes laid up. Again, Hunter, Shaman, Mage for StrifeCro, and then Hunter, Shaman, Warrior for VLPS. This is the first tournament in a long time that I haven't seen Paladin or Druid being played right now. And sorry, to start off for like lineups. And that's that's already pretty cool for Sealed, but I want to see a little bit more. What are these guys going to be betting? How are they going to be? How confident do they feel in their lineups? Who do you think head to head, if you're in StrifeCro or VLPS's position?
It's really tough because if I look at from deck to deck, each player has powerful decks that I think are going to win a lot, but each player has decks that have a big question mark on them. StrifeCro's Shaman deck, for instance, don't know if it's going to be able to make it to the early game. And then, of course, VLPS's Patron Warrior deck has a lot of cards that do nothing by themselves. So that deck could end up struggling if it gets a poor draw in some situations. So if I had to give it over, I'd probably just say StrifeCro because he does have a lot of consistently good stuff, and VLPS is trying to do some bold things with his Warrior deck.
Yeah, I like VLPS's decks a little bit better. I feel like they actually play a little bit more normal, with the exception of that Patron deck. I feel like that's a much more synergy based. I like the fact that he has abilities to continue to impact the board over and over. So I'm going to give him the slight nod, but one thing I do like is how StrifeCro has been able to find synergies in his decks that I think brings out the potential of cards a little bit more. Yeah. So I think in terms of being able to be innovative, I like StrifeCro's decks.
Yeah. Looking at him again, VLPS does have a lot of the spells, I suppose. He has a lot of just straight up removal, which you talked about a little bit earlier when you were referencing how Raynad was trying to teach you a little bit more about Sealed. Is very important, and StrifeCro seems to lack in there, but I guess we'll have to see. Only one way to find out, and that's by playing some Sealed.
All right, cool. So let's take a look at how these players are choosing to bet before the series starts. Keep in mind there is a minimum bet and there is a maximum bet, and I think right now they're going to be putting in how much they feel confident with. So it's like VLPS is on the action here. We even mic'd him up so he can like speak into the mic and see. Price is Right style.
Yeah, the ante I think for the initial rounds here is going to be 150 with a minimum bet, a maximum raise each time of 75. So each player can raise 75. So it's a maximum total pool for the first round of 600.
All right, so let's go down to the stage floor with Wade, our dealer, to see what StrifeCro and VLPS will be betting for the first match.
Hey, welcome, guys. Go ahead and take your Astros off. StrifeCro? Good. Go ahead and take those off. All right, so the first round is going to be a $150 ante. Your whites are 25, reds are 50, and your blues are 100. So go ahead and put your 150 into the pot.
Red is 50?
Correct.
These are 25?
Correct. All right, there we go. So you're sitting on blue side, so match one, you're going to be betting first. But first, you guys need to announce your classes for game one.
I'm a mage, shaman, and hunter.
Or for game one, what your match is.
What does that mean?
Or what class are you using for game one?
So I pick first to use the counter picking?
I guess they're supposed to be blind, so.
So how do we do that?
Can you pick it and then flip your screens?
Okay. What?
You can reposition. All right, so on three, if you guys can go ahead and show your tablets to each other. 1, 2, 3.
Shaman. Okay, me too.
All right, so we got shamans both. you're going to have the first bet, StrifeCro.
Okay.
So you have the option. You can bet up to 75.
Let me check out my list. Just per game, huh?
Correct.
All right, I'm bet 75.
And then you have the option to call or raise.
I'm going to call that.
Okay. All right, so we have the additional bets in, and you guys are good to go on game number 1.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Headsets back on.
Wow. All right. So StrifeCro already pushing the action a little bit. I like it. I like a man that can take charge. StrifeCro putting up 75. Nothing too hasty though, because remember there's 1,000 gold on the bankroll. So if you push like hundreds per game,
Well, they also
those things get really high.
They also have a 150 ante. So this total pool for the first match is or first game is 450. Each player has 225 coins or gold in the opening pot. So StrifeCro, wow, that's a pretty confident move from both players. You know, going with the maximum.
I like it.
Maximum bet for the.
I'm already liking it. The only thing that I wish could be enhanced is if StrifeCro makes the bet and just keeps staring at VLPS as he puts 75 in, and VLPS just buckles under pressure, like, okay, call, Because again, in this scenario, you don't want to necessarily fold like very early on. You want to be able to play it out. But as the series pans out, if StrifeCro or VLPS goes up and gets the lead, and then you make the bets, what happens if you don't feel like you can match it? That's where it gets very interesting.
Yeah, and I think VLPS actually also has the option to, or during the match, so not anymore, but he has the option to raise even more.
Yes,
So
exactly. They can say, you know what, I want to beat that shaman deck.
So he can raise 75 as well, not just check. So they can go up to a total of 600 in these preliminary rounds, which 300 per player. We might have some quick rounds in our hands, depending how confident these players are in their deck. But I think the first match is going to show a lot, and the first match is going to affect these guys' betting patterns.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
And it's good information to be able to gauge the confidence level of what your opponent is, because in a scenario like this, people look at the betting and immediately start thinking like, well, they're just feel like they're just saying how confident they feel, but you also can play the player as well. You can say like, in this situation, I feel like this deck feels a lot weaker, but maybe I'm just going to bet high or bet low. And then you kind of gauge, okay, well, this person is giving me information of like how strong or how weak his cards are. That's usually the element that comes into play here. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I think we're about to get underway with game number 1 in just a second here. Both these guys. Yeah, but the fact that there's also a dealer sitting in them is also pretty funny in my opinion, TJ.
So handsomely dressed.
Yeah,
as well.
he's wearing a nice vest.
Yeah, and a little bow tie.
Yeah. I'm criminally. I feel like some of these guys feel like they're criminally underdressed for the event, but at the same time, they're repping their sponsors. Good, big shout out there. Meanwhile, while we have an opportunity to, speaking of sponsors, we want to give a special thanks to our friends over at Lyft. They're offering $50 off for your first ride with Lyft if you use the code Esports. It's a ride share service, so if you need to get from point A to point B, for example, you want to go to the beach, you can you don't want to drive over there and handle it yourself. You can just get a Lyft. You just download the app and then use the code Esports. You get $50 off.
If you want to go to Taco Bell and don't feel like driving yourself,
Yep,
take a Lyft.
That sounds like a plan, TJ. In fact, we should do that while we take a quick break. And when we come back, our first game is going to kick off between StrifeCro and VLPS.